Good morning, Barry Bryson here. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. We're continuing our study with the Ten Commandments, and we're looking at commandment number 6, you shall not murder. Murder is not exactly you shall not kill, but murder is technically the taking of an innocent life. But there's something larger being communicated, which Jesus makes clear in Matthew chapter 5, which is the assumption on the part of one human being that they have the right of life or death over another human being. Now, there are instances when God gives that right or delegates that right, or doesn't delegate that right, but commands that humans be his instruments of life and death. That's probably the appropriate way to say that. We see that in the Old Testament, in the laws that God's written, making certain violation of certain laws capital offenses, in ordering campaigns, military campaigns, and in some occasions in the Old Testament, genocides, which I know is problematic for all of us to think about, and we're not going to talk about today. But it's also true in the New Testament. Read Romans chapter 13, beginning with verse 1. God gives our governments, our secular governments, the power of the sword, and calls our governments his ministers to protect the innocent against the guilty, and says that they bear the power of the sword and not in vain, that they're doing the Lord's work. So anyone who puts their life on the line and prepares themselves to exercise justice, lethal justice, to protect innocent people against guilty people is doing the Lord's work. The Bible says so. But one human being, apart from God's direct word, does not have the right to say to another human being, you're not a human, and I can treat you like you're less than a human, and therefore your life is not valuable as a human life is. And that's the way Jesus applies this law in Matthew chapter 5, verses 21 through 26. Let's not forget that phrase of Jesus from Romans chapter 3. The Sabbath is made for man, not man for the Sabbath. God gave these commands not on a whim, but for our benefit. And when we use these commands to hurt each other, then, although we may in our minds be keeping the letter of the law, we are certainly and openly violating the law, and God considers it a violation of the law. Jesus says in Matthew chapter 5, you have heard the ancients were told, you shall not commit murder, and whoever commits murder will be liable to the court. So he's stating the law and then the commentary that they had written upon the law. I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother shall be guilty before the court. Whoever shall say to his brother, Rakah, or worthless person, shall be guilty before the Supreme Court. And whoever says, you fool, shall be guilty enough to go into fiery hell. If you are presenting your offering at the altar and remember that your brother has something against you, leave your offering therefore before the altar and go your way, and first be reconciled to your brother, and then come and present your offering. So Jesus says our relationship with God cannot be right if our relationship with each other is wrong and it's our fault. I mean, he just says it straight up. Go fix that first. And then do your best to fix that. As Paul will say in Romans 12, in as much as it depends on you, be at peace with everybody. And then talk to God. But he says it's not just about, the physical act. It's about what's in your heart, and it's about the words that you say. If inside you think of someone else as less than, as worthless, and then you express that to them, that's just as bad. That's just as bad. You're going to be judged as violating this law for that, as in the same way as if you had, as Cain did to Abel, raise your hand against a brother and take his innocent life. You don't have the right to dehumanize someone else, not with your physical aggression, not in your heart, and not with your words. You just don't. And you're violating God's law when you're violating this law specifically, when you dehumanize another person, when you think of them as less than you are, less than your tribe is. That is going to be treated like murder in God's eyes because it comes from the same motivation. And as Jesus is going to point out, we have to keep these laws from the inside out, or we have not kept them at all. Okay. You shall not commit murder. You shall not commit adultery. We'll talk about that next time. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes.